Kundalini awakening is a very, very, very strong process of the regulating of your nervous system. And if you're not well equipped or understand like what energy this actually is, it's enough to make you go crazy.
Welcome to the Multiple Truths podcast. We're your hosts, Holly
and Brittany. This is a space where we can come together healing in community, where we share our self-love journeys, insights, and wisdom.
A space with no hierarchy or judgment, fostering love, compassion, and respect, and where we honor our differences. With open minds and hearts, everyone's truth is welcome here. We are in this together. Let's dive into the episode.
Hello and welcome back to another episode. You are here with Brittany today. I will be having a guest on the podcast today. We dive into some really interesting conversation. I have Matthew coming on today. You might recognize him from social media. I'm going to do a little introduction before I welcome him on this show so you have an idea of his backstory and what he's been through. But conversation with Matthew was really quite interesting. We talk a lot about healing, the impact that healing can have on your life, the impact that a spiritual awakening can have on your life. And we really talk about his story and a lot of what he had to navigate. And it's very inspiring. I think that a lot of people will be able to resonate with his journey. So I'm really excited to dive in. But let me introduce him to you in case you don't know who he is. Matthew Olk is a 33-year-old former corporate professional who left a successful career in the mortgage industry, including a role at JP Morgan, to pursue a life of truth and spiritual fulfillment. After a profound spiritual awakening in November of 2022, Matthew made the bold decision to sell his home, buy an RV, and set off on a transformative journey across the country with his dog, seeking healing and a deeper connection with God. In February 2024, Matthew faced the heartbreak of losing his dog, which brought a new level of grief and growth. Shortly after, a trip to Europe led him to meet his now fiancée, and only 5 months later, he relocated to Europe to begin an entirely new chapter. Today, Matthew is launching his restructured coaching business, which will be embedded in nervous system regulation, and he is also embarking on an exciting new project in Europe, which we will be learning more about soon. He has found a renewed sense of purpose through a deep connection to nature and the practice of herbal medicine. Matthew's story is one of courage, transformation, and the relentless pursuit of authenticity. Through his experience, he has opened his heart, embraced love, repaired the broken relationships with his family, and found a more meaningful life. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So hello, Matthew. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to chat with you. I feel like we can pull so much good stuff from each other today.
Oh, I'm really excited to get into conversation. For those listening, I came across Matthew on TikTok. Love your work. I really resonate with a lot of what you talk about. And I know that you've been through what a lot of people call a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And I would just love to talk about you and your story today, your journey, what's gotten you here. I know there's been a lot of shifts. I know you're going through a lot of shifts right now, currently. I guess, how did all of this start for you? Like, where did your journey start? And I'll let you kind of just take it from there.
Yeah. So I've always been like what most people would say, like a sensitive child, right? I felt a lot, right? I always wanted to express love, but I was never, I was born in an environment where my parents didn't necessarily know how to express love, because of their own wounds and how they were traumatized. And, I grew up in I would say a pretty average American household where, you have a house that is full of, like trauma and people just trying to a lot of wounds. And, I was, I'm the middle child. And, so growing up, I didn't have a horrible childhood, but there was, mental, verbal, emotional abuse, and that kind of formulates, who it is that you think you are. It creates this identity, right? Of, I say a lot, if we're born in a house that's on fire, right, we believe that the world is on fire too. So like you tend to go out into the world thinking that the world is the same household that you grew up in. So I was closed off, and, I was I had a huge sense of humor. I was funny. I was wild. I was crazy, into
Mhm.
my teenage years and into my 20s. I was doing drugs and drinking, but I was also a
Mhm.
really like go-getter. I worked really hard. I was a manager at 18 years old for, a gas station slash bakery. I was running a multi-million dollar, location. And so like
Wow.
like, I never really had the space as a child to be a child. I was always older than
Mm.
what I actually was, like parenting my
Right.
parents or like my mom when she was going
Mhm.
through her own mental health issues because
Mm.
mental health runs pretty deep in my family. Anxiety,
Mm.
depression, suicide, panic attacks, a lot of
Wow.
deep sexual trauma runs in my
Mm.
family. So, I grew up with this personality of like you have to be subservient to the world and subservient to
Right.
adults and like don't walk on eggshells, work
Yeah.
really hard and work yourself to death, like work,
Yeah.
climb the corporate ladder. I was the first one in my family
Yeah.
to graduate with a degree. I have a degree in finance. I went to college, and when I
Mm.
graduated then I moved to Chicago, and that's when I got really
Wow.
crazy. I got into cocaine, and I was in the mortgage industry,
Wow.
and I was like the top 1% loan originator in the country. And I made a lot of money, but I was so
Wow.
miserable. Like I was so miserable.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what led up to my awakening at 32 or 31. So like 2 years ago, my awakening happened November
Mhm.
of 2022. Um,
Mm.
I got to just this really deep, dark night of the soul. Like I
Mhm.
was struggling with, suicidal thoughts,
Mm.
anxiety, depression. I was on Lexapro, Xanax. I also had asthma.
Wow.
I was taking an inhaler every day. I was getting sick. 2022, I got sick 4 times, and I was on
Wow.
antibiotics and steroids. And
Wow.
so then that led me to, try to find like a deeper meaning for life. I was like, this can't be what it's
Mhm.
about. Like I achieved the American dream at
Mhm.
28 years old. Like
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
making $200,000 a year. I bought my own condo, two
Mhm.
bedroom, two bathroom condo in the middle of Chicago. Like I did what I was supposed to do. I got the degree, and I was still,
Check, 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 check.
yeah, I checked every single box. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I was still miserable. And that kind
Yeah.
of led me, that's when I started recognizing the patterns in my life. I think in the
Yeah.
beginning of our awakening, we start to recognize our patterns of suffering and being like, okay, why is this
Yeah.
repeating? Why do I feel like
Yeah.
I'm living every single day on
Mhm.
repeat? Get up, brush my teeth, eat breakfast, drink coffee, go to work, go home, watch Netflix,
Mhm.
boom, every day I was just a robot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cog in the wheel.
yes. And I was led to Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural. And like that's
Mhm.
the book that changed my life. When anybody asks,
Wow.
any books I can recommend, that's always the first book because what I
Okay.
I was not religious. I was not spiritual.
Mhm.
In fact, I
Right.
detested God, because
Okay.
the world gave me this relationship of you're supposed to be this
Mm.
way for God. And if you're not, well, then you're going
Mm.
to hell. You're going to,
Mm.
whatever it may be. And like, I looked out into the world and I was like, why would God allow all of this kind of stuff? Like, there's so much
Yeah.
evil in the world. Like, I don't even, if this is the type of God that exists, I don't want anything to do with God. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was led to Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural, where it connects the science with spirituality.
Yeah.
And that is kind of what I
It's
needed. Yeah, I needed that
yeah.
to be able to be
It's
like, oh, this is real. Like, this is something that I can
yeah.
actually, like absorb. And it was in my
Yeah.
second meditation, I had a spontaneous kundalini awakening.
Oh my gosh, I would sorry, I want you to continue what you're talking about, but I'm really curious about that as well because I had a kundalini awakening myself I experienced last year,
Yeah,
and I don't think it was spontaneous. It happened on a mushroom journey. I wasn't expecting it,
yeah,
but I don't think it was considered spontaneous because I feel like that's something completely different.
yeah,
So, I would love to get to that at some point too.
yeah, no, absolutely. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
So I was reading his book like religiously. I read the whole book in less
Mhm.
than a week while I was working from
Wow.
home. So like, also this was like the whole COVID thing, and I had a job I was able to work from home, so I was really able to like, absorb all of this information and like just kind of put my work on the side and like
Yeah.
focus on all of this healing stuff. And it was a lot
Mhm.
for me because I was deep in the matrix. I was so like ignorant.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I didn't know about ancient aliens. I didn't know about ancient civilizations. And now like all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff that I was learning was like, holy crap, like we've been lied to.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
Ugh,
this is,
chills.
yeah,
Yes. It's like this is the stuff we should be learning in schools,
yeah,
like I used to be a high school teacher. I was a teacher for 5 years, and I'm just like, and teachers mean well. Like genuinely some of the best people I know, they genuinely care, but it's so backwards, the system,
yeah,
what's taught,
yeah.
even the teachers are so brainwashed, and I could say that cuz I was there myself. Anyways, that's my opinion with it, but we've been lied to from a young age, from
Oh,
kindergarten. So of course you are well in the matrix. Same with me, same with everybody. To quote unquote escape the matrix is not easy, is really not easy. And I feel like a lot of people, if they get there, it's, midlife crisis. It sounds like you hit your midlife crisis at 28, which is funny. That's exactly the age it happened for me too, was
mm,
28. So yeah, I mean, that's also like Saturn when people go through their Saturn return. I'm not too familiar with astrology, but I feel like those who are listening, you might be familiar with that. That's a time for a lot of change for a lot of people. But anyways, sorry, continue with
no.
the spontaneous awakening.
Yeah. So at this point, when I was reading this book and when I was meditating, I still didn't even know what I was, messing with, or, because like a Kundalini awakening is a very, very, very strong process of the regulating of your nervous system. And if you're not
Mm,
well equipped or understand like what energy this actually is, it's enough to make you go crazy, right? Like it's
yeah.
enough to, because it changes your brain. Like I don't,
Hmm.
if it's happened to you, you know what I mean. It changes something
Yeah.
inside of you to where like you see life completely differently. And so I sat down in my first meditation and I learned like, okay, I have to learn how to silence my mind. Like my mind has always raced my whole life, right? Like the average person,
Hmm.
Dr. Joe says it has 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. 90% of them are the same thoughts over and over, and 50% of them aren't even real. So, I was that
Wow.
person that was, racing thoughts, repetitive racing thoughts, horrible anxiety. So I really, really, really wanted to make a change. And what I realized was like, it's in the heart. Right. And so like,
Yeah.
I sat down in my first meditation, I kind of silenced my mind. But like, as I would read this information, I would feel this confirmation in my chest. And it's like what maybe
Mm,
people would equate to being the Holy Spirit, or, when you're
mhm.
talking about God and when you're talking about the Spirit and when you're talking about that type of, you can feel it, right? You can
Yeah.
feel that fire in your
Mm,
chest that's saying you're onto something. Keep saying it, keep
mm.
speaking it, keep
Yes.
doing it. And like,
Yes.
that's the miracle to me, is like, the miracle is getting somebody to recognize the spirit within themselves by speaking it into
Mm,
themselves, and that restores your perception from fear to love,
mhm,
and that sort of. And so
mhm.
in my second meditation, before that happened, I was talking to my friends. I was like, you guys, like I read this book, like, and there's something more to this life. Like there's really something more than to just, get up, eat, sleep, work, repeat, die at 68, and, not even enjoy your life. Like I
Yeah.
really felt like I was uncovering something really profound. Like I was the first person in the world to
Yes.
figure this out. Like I had found the key
Yeah.
to everybody's
Yeah.
liberation.
And and of course it feels that way because you were probably the first one within your group, within what within, that environment, which totally makes sense because I experienced the same thing. It's like, oh my gosh. And I don't know about you, but it's like, I want everybody to know this. So it's like trying to convince your friends, your family. And that can be challenging when it's like they're just looking at you like,
Are you
okay,
in it?
like,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
like, do we need to check you in? Like,
And
yeah,
and that's what I believe that happens to a lot of people as well. Like,
yeah.
people that really have expanded their consciousness or have like a spontaneous awakening and they don't know what's going on.
Hmm.
Our Western medicine will say, whatever label they want to
Hmm.
slap on it, whether it's schizophrenia or, you know, um, whatever it may be. And so, Eastern medicine, Eastern culture can recognize a Kundalini awakening actually. And they're like, hey,
Yeah.
like, let's go put your feet in the dirt. This is actually what happened to you.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I was in my second meditation after I was talking to my friends, because I was like telling them like, you guys, like there's something more to this reality. Like I'm
Yeah.
finding it and I can feel it. And like as I was talking to
Hmm.
them, I could feel it even more. And so I remember reading in the book Dr. Joe's heart brain coherency meditation, where
Mm,
you connect your brain with your heart by
mm,
evoking feelings of gratitude, by silencing your mind, thinking loving, grateful thoughts, and being able to feel that, wow, I really can consciously change my emotions if I sit down and silence my mind enough, right? And that's why,
yeah,
I'm not a Christian, but be still and know that I am God, right? When we still
yeah,
mind, we can recognize that God is all around us, but within us as well, right? But our
yeah,
thoughts and our anxiety, right, create all
yeah,
this chaos that separates
yeah,
us from being able to feel that
yeah.
heart.
I always like to say, like, the soul is an extension of God,
Mm,
which is who we are,
yeah,
and the ego is an extension of the devil,
yes,
very much so the mind, the noise, and, we talk about good and evil. I don't necessarily believe it's good and evil, it's more like just polar energies, right? And we're here to differentiate, we're here to learn, we're here to experience all of it, but it's
yeah,
becoming aware of what is this voice versus what is this voice,
yeah.
and that we're not taught that. So,
Yeah. And it's hard to listen to this voice because this voice is
mhm.
logical, right? This voice
Yes.
says, oh, okay, I got to plan. I got to think ahead. I got to make sure that everything's like perfect. Where this voice says, let go, surrender, and just and that is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Who wants to like let go,
Yeah.
surrender, and like be looked at as crazy in the world? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
but it's,
and trust and have faith, right? Especially when we've been taught to think our way through life. We've been taught to plan everything. You're not going to be successful. You're not going to amount to anything unless you have your future planned out. But all that is control, control, control,
yes.
control, which just keeps us in that wheel, and that those other cycles longer.
Yes, absolutely. And so that's what broke me free of those cycles was I was talking to my
Mm,
friends and we were actually all working together. So I got off the Zoom call and I could feel it in my chest and it was like almost like I knew that God was trying to communicate with me. Like it's like
mm,
cuz God speaks to us through the heart, right? Through
yeah.
feeling, through energy, through emotion.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, like I'm going to sit down with this and I'm really going to work, like I'm really going to sit down in my meditation. And I literally reached out to God and I said, God, like, please reveal yourself to me. Show me that like this is real and that I'm not crazy. And so that's when my Kundalini awakening happened. I was sitting there in my
Whoa.
meditation and I felt this flood of energy and it flew through the top of my head into the base of I'm getting chills.
I have chills too. I have full body chills right now.
It went to the base of my spine and it's a very euphoric and a very like ecstasy but also
Hmm.
sensual and intimate, like
Yeah.
orgasmic
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
feeling,
Yeah.
which I think that we should be more open to speak about that sort of stuff too, because I
Yeah.
think that can throw people off, like, what do you mean sexual energy and God? That's weird, but like
Yeah.
that's what created us, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a great point. I love that. I could talk about that all day. So I'm just going to say a quick point on it because I like I said I could talk about it all day,
Yes.
but sexual energy has been very skewed in society. People associate it with, being promiscuous, there's porn and all of these things. So there's such a negative association with it. It's looked at as evil, the temptation, when in reality we should be comfortable with our bodies. There's no shame in being sensual with yourself and feeling that pleasure. Like we're supposed to feel that pleasure.
Yes.
But it's do you know what I'm saying? Like it's been skewed in society, and
Oh yeah.
unfortunately a lot of people have like it's very toxic. It's very toxic, like just the way it's been taught and the way kids are growing up and the way it's looked at in movies and all of the things. So I think it's something that needs to be rewritten, um, because a lot of people hold a lot of shame too and are uncomfortable with feeling, pleasure because they associate it with something bad, and it's actually nothing bad.
Yeah.
So, and when I had my awakening, it was very it started at the base of my spine and went up. So it was like, I guess it's interesting yours came down.
Yeah.
For me it started there, but it started with that pleasure. It
Yeah.
started with, and I'm like, what is going on? And then eventually my tongue was like literally moving like a snake. It was the weirdest thing.
Wow.
And I was like, what is happening right now? And then I was like, it clicked. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having a Kundalini awakening. And then it like went away
Yeah.
because I got in my head about it.
Yep.
And then I relaxed and it started happening again, and it slowly moved up. For me, it like needed to clear blockages as it moved up. So it was like a
Yeah.
slow process, and I needed to sit through some feelings of shame and stuff to clear like these blockages, but then it
Yeah.
went all the way up to my head, and like you said, it was very pleasureful, euphoric. So yeah, anyways, but sorry,
No,
continue with your story here.
yeah, so, like, I sat down and, like, I reached out and I, like, said, like, "God, please." And so, like, the way that I equate that is, like, I reached out with my words, but God knew that I was reaching out with my heart too, because
Yeah.
that's how we communicate, right? People say,
Yeah.
like, "God," like, people sometimes, like, when we get into the state of, like, we're in a bad situation, we beg God, but we beg with our words, but our heart is still closed off. And
Yeah.
so what I realized is, like, I actually had opened my heart and I was being genuine with my intentions, laying it all, like, symbolically laying everything at, like, the feet of God and saying, like, "I can't do this
Mm,
anymore without you, and, like, reveal yourself
mm,
to me." So that's when I felt it went, like, in my
mm.
head, and it went to the base of my spine, and then it shot up. So it's like it went down, up. And so, like, yes.
Interesting.
And I remember, like, my eyes opened and I was sitting there as it was happening and I just had tears streaming down my face and, like, I couldn't
Wow.
talk. And then I, like, fell to the ground because I was sitting down, but then I, like, fell on the ground and I just started crying. Like, I was bawling my eyes out,
Whoa.
decades of trauma. And after that, my anxiety was gone. I was off of my medicine the next day. I cold turkeyed my Lexapro. I was on an inhaler 3 to 4 times a day, and I was no longer on my inhaler. And
Wow.
on a scientific level, what I realized is, like, I signaled to my nervous system that I'm safe.
Mm.
Right? I told my
Chills.
nervous
Yeah.
system, like, "You are safe now," right? You sit and you still the
Yeah.
mind and you quiet those thoughts that aren't yours. Your nervous
Wow.
system begins to realize, "Okay, I'm not getting chased by a lion anymore," figuratively. So it can
Mm.
release
Mhm.
from the sympathetic state to the parasympathetic state. And now my body,
Mhm.
I think I said that right. Now my body is beginning to heal, right? Which is what we're
Wow.
meant to do.
Yeah.
You're in the
Yeah.
parasympathetic state, rest and digest. No wonder my anxiety, depression, and asthma were gone because I was no longer living in fight or flight. So that's
Yeah.
what I kind of equate all, like, I'm not like a one belief system kind of person. Like, I think, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity,
Mhm.
science, they're all pointing to the same message, right? And that's that
Yeah, I agree.
love heals and fear kills. And
Yes. Yeah.
when we become that embodiment of love that we go out into the world and search for,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And we realize the only way that I can have love, true love in my life is to be that unconditional love that I was
Mm.
spent my life
Mhm.
looking for, right? Because we're taught that
Yes.
we have to give love to receive love, but we just
Yeah.
have to be love and we will attract it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And,
Yes. Yeah.
and then and then after that moment of my kundalini rising, like, everything changed. Like, everything was gone. Everything.
Mm.
Like, every thought, every worry, every stress, every fear, I was blissed out. Like, I was in this state of
Wow.
bliss for a few weeks. Like,
Mm.
nothing matters. Like, life is so cool. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I called my mom actually right after the awakening had happened, and I was like, "Mom," and it's like I knew the story of Jesus as soon as it
Mm.
happened. I knew the message that Jesus was trying to
Mm.
tell us is that, like, Christ
Mhm.
in you. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
you are.
Christ consciousness.
Yes, and
I
it's
think, like, I sorry,
oh,
keep
go
going.
no,
I
you're
say, like, to me, like, Christ consciousness, like, Christ has risen, kundal I think that the Christ consciousness is, like, very tied with kundalini awakening, like, having a kundalini awakening, it's like Christ has risen within you,
mhm,
and everybody has the ability to raise that consciousness within themselves because it is within each and every one of us.
yes, and and to bring it back to, like, Christ's teachings, right? That's exactly what he was trying to tell us. The kingdom of heaven is within you, right? If you
Yes.
love your neighbor as yourself, if you give with a
Mhm.
cheerful heart, if you forgive, if you have grace, compassion,
Mhm.
understanding, right? If you don't hold resentment and bitterness and guilt and shame, that's what stops your kundalini from rising, right? Guilt and shame will kill your sexual energy, right?
Yes.
And,
Mm.
when it happened to me, it's like I automatically knew because I felt the healing happening in my body. Like, and like,
Yeah.
I was conditioned and programmed to think, like, I'm going to be on an inhaler for the rest of my life because asthma has no
Mhm.
cure. But in reality, asthma
Yeah.
was an indicator and a signal from my nervous system saying, "Hey, you are not in the environment I want you to be in. So unfortunately, you're not going to be able to breathe
Yeah.
until you open your heart." Right. And when I opened my heart, it was like,
Yeah.
like, I could take deeper breaths
Ugh,
and, like, it
I
was
have
no
chills.
longer, yeah, like, I wasn't
Yeah.
constricted or in
Yeah.
it was when you feel a healing like that, it has no choice but to change your brain. It has no choice but
Yeah.
to change the way that you see the world. And like I said, the
Yeah.
miracle, right? The miracle is the restoration of our perception from that of fear
Mm.
to that of love. And when
Mm.
we change our perception to love, that's when we
Mhm.
heal. That's the miracle. That's what the miracle
Mm.
is in other people, when we can get them to see that from the perception of love, and then they heal from IBS,
Yes.
whatever autoimmune
Yes.
disease that they may be having from their dysregulated
Yeah.
nervous system. In the nervous system, in God, right? I look at
Yeah.
our nervous system as the antenna in which we communicate with God, right? Through opening our
Yes.
heart and through emotion, because emotion, vibration,
Yeah.
all of that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And since then I've had like three additional like Kundalini awakenings. They got deeper and deeper and deeper because
Wow.
it's like the Kundalini will train you in a sense and teach you,
Yeah.
if you have to
Mhm.
still the mind to like silence, and then you begin to feel these things happen in your body. But if you get into your
Mhm.
brain and you start to think about it, it stops. Like it
It
stops there.
stops. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then you
Yeah.
have to like, okay, then you have to calm yourself back down, because it's literally your nervous system is firing and rewiring and your heart's racing
Yeah.
really fast. And you have
Yes.
to calm
Yeah.
your mind through all of
Yeah.
these like changes
Yeah. Yeah.
require a level of surrender in your body, and like
Yeah.
also full bodied orgasms for like an hour in like one of my kundalini like there's
Whoa.
so much surrender, and it's
Yes.
amazing. Like I wish everybody could experience it.
Yes.
It's like
Oh my
it's
gosh.
so intimate, and like um it relieves those feelings of guilt and shame, and like allows you to
Yeah.
restore your belief and understanding of what sexual creative energy is, without the added levels of guilt and shame and running away from it. And it opens you up to
Yeah.
be a more kind and loving human, right? Because then
Yeah.
you're when you receive that love from God, right, which is what I believe
Mhm.
that all that energy is, whatever word people want to use. But when you receive
Yeah.
that love, then you can freely give that love, right?
Yes.
That doesn't mean
Mm.
that I was fully healed. Like I don't think,
Yeah.
I'm healing every freaking day and going through like, crazy experiences. And like, one day I'm like on top of a mountain, and the next day is like, God's like, nope, you got more to learn. And then I'm starting back.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and so then I'll go into like through, or if you have any questions, I don't know if you want me to keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you said is just so fascinating. I love listening to you speak. One thing that I want to say when you're talking about like quieting the mind, for those listening, like, um, because it's hard to articulate because Kundalini energy moves through me quite a lot too. And, I call it like, oh, there's work being done on my body, whether it's like spirit helping move things around or me moving things around, not being conscious of it. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
work's happening. You were talking about the fear, like your heart starting to race and all this stuff. So for any of you who experience anything like this, for me, what really helps, I repeat this to myself: you are safe.
Mm,
You are safe. You are safe. And I literally just repeat that to myself. And then I'm not really thinking of anything because I'm just focused on you are safe, which takes the mind out of it.
yeah.
It helps calm me down, just really deep breaths, because it's hard to, it's a physical reaction, right? You
Mm,
start to get, the heart starts going, the mind starts racing. But for me, what's really helped allow these things to happen is just talking to myself, just reminding myself, like, you are safe, like, you are safe. And then for me, at least, it's actually really helped. And it has allowed the energy, the Holy Spirit, God, whatever it is that you want to call it, to move through me. And miracles for me have happened as well. Like my sciatica has been like
mm.
cured. I had asthma as well, which I don't need a puffer anymore either.
Isn't that
Yeah. So I wasn't taking as, for me, it was more so exercise induced asthma. So it wasn't as strong as yours, but
crazy?
yeah, so just very similar, like parallels and whatnot as well. And it's like we all have the ability to do this, we all have the ability to heal from the inside out. And I feel like in society it's unfortunate because we go to the doctor and they're like, oh, here's a band-aid, here's this, and we've become so disconnected from ourselves and who we truly are. So it's nobody's fault, but as a result of this disconnection, we have forgotten that we can heal, and it really does start within. And like you were saying, it's really love. I think that the new religion should be love.
Yeah.
I personally don't align with any religion. I think there's truths in all religion, but I think unfortunately there have been a lot of the messages have been skewed over time. So I think that love should be the new religion, and I do see the truth in all religion. And you're right, it's all pointing to the same place. And Yeah, no, please keep going though. Everything you're saying is just
Yeah.
so fascinating and so interesting to listen to. So,
Yeah. And so after that Kundalini awakening, nothing was the same. So,
mhm.
and it's crazy to look back on it because God like already started, you know, planting the seeds in my life before my initial awakening. Like I was leaving my job like during that Kundalini awakening. So after my Kundalini awakening, I had a 6 week break in between leaving my job, but then I got another job at JP Morgan. So I was
Mm.
working for the most corrupt bank in the world in freaking Chicago after my awakening,
Interesting.
you know, so
Interesting.
yeah. And
Interesting. Sorry, I just like
no, no,
I say that word a lot. I always joke I should get that word tattooed on me. Interesting. Um it one thing I want to touch on really quick though. It's so divinely led. It's like when your soul is ready for these shifts to happen, God, source, the universe, spirit, whatever it is you want to call it, will make sure that your path is taken care of, whether it be you get fired from a job because that's necessary, or you get a new job, or it's whatever it may be. It's
yeah,
so interesting when you really learn how to surrender, let go, and trust. Let Jesus take the wheel. Like when you let Jesus take the wheel, he will lead you down the path that your soul is calling you toward.
yeah.
So I love that very, very much so. It sounds like everything was very divinely led, which, doesn't surprise me. Yes, but sorry,
Oh,
continue. Hey guys, we are super excited to announce the launch of something new. We will be launching something called a community on a platform called School. That's SKOOL. It's similar to a Patreon, but better. It's a platform for learning and, well, community. Basically, it will give you access to exclusive content from both Holly and I. Holly is a certified holistic health coach, and she is also a certified embodiment coach. I have a degree in kinesiology and received a certification in personal training. I also am an advancing student in mediumship development and have been channeling spirit for as long as I can remember. Through our own experience and journeys, as well as our knowledge gained through education, we will be curating content to specifically aid in your journeys back home to self. This will include monthly guided meditations, guided embodiment practices, pick-a-card readings, energy healing, guided workouts, and healthy recipes. It will also include important teachings to help you become the most embodied version of yourself. Some topics will include how to connect with your intuition, how to tap into the psychic within you, how to heal your inner child, how to face and understand your ego, how to heal your relationship with your body and food, and more. This platform will also allow for conversation and connection with others who are also part of the community, giving you the opportunity to potentially meet other like-minded individuals who are also on the path of becoming the best versions of themselves. This path is not easy and at times can be isolating. We are not supposed to do this alone. Community is so healing and so important, so we hope this will provide support for you regardless of where you might be on your journey. It's only $22.22 a month, where you will have unlimited access to all of the content as well as the new content rolled out monthly. It will also give you a $10 discount on our monthly healing circles. Holly and I both struggled with self-image, self-confidence, knowing our self-worth, and knowing what it means to truly love ourselves majority of our lives. The truth is that we are not taught how to properly love ourselves in this day and age, and we are on a mission to make change. We owe it to the future generations to come. We believe that it is important to love your mind, body, and spirit cohesively in order to truly step into the highest, most authentic version of yourself. We hope to see you there, honey.
So at that point during my awakening, I was in the middle of a job transition, and I was also in a relationship with my partner, who was
Mm-hmm.
a man. And we'll get into,
Mm-hmm.
how things have changed in my life and are changing and shifting in my life. But I realized, like, when you have an awakening, right? Like before you have an awakening, and when I go like this and this, I don't mean as one's better or worse, but like you're here with the people in your life, right? You're vibing on this level because it's the personality that you have, and then boom, you have an awakening and your personality is completely different, and it's like you no longer resonate with these people because your belief systems change, your perceptions of the world change, your whole personality and aura and being literally shifts.
Yeah.
and it's no longer vibing with the people that you used to vibe. So like that's kind of what happened in my relationship. And so my relationship ended, which is kind of a normal thing to happen after you have an awakening, right? Like
Mhm.
it ended so beautifully, right? Like he and I are still friends, we still talk, like, but it's like God removed the things out of my life in order for me to take those next steps and to, let
Right.
go even further. And that's
Mhm.
when, after I broke up with my partner, I quit my jobs from JP Morgan. I was only at JP Morgan for like
Mhm.
4 months, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm just going to figure it out. I don't really know what's going to happen, but I'd rather be homeless and eat out of a dumpster and love God than to
Yeah.
be plugged into the matrix and have it suck my soul out for the rest of my life. Like,
Ye
I was willing to do
I hear
anything.
you.
And
Yeah.
I quit my job, sold my condo in Chicago, and bought an RV, and went and traveled the country with my dog Abby. And
Our paths, sorry, sound so similar. I just want to draw a quick parallel. I ended up getting out of a really big relationship, and within the next couple of months, I ended up quitting my job as a teacher, dropping out of school. I was in a master's program for counseling. I started working for myself. I sold all of my things, and I ended up going. I didn't buy an RV, but I went Airbnb hopping with me and my cat.
nice. And it's so crazy because our stories are so similar to so many people's stories. So it's like
Yes.
millions of
Mhm.
people, or I don't know, hundreds of thousands or millions of people that are
Yeah.
having these awakenings are speaking the same language. We're speaking the
Yes.
same story. It just sounds
Mhm.
different in our own way of how we've understood it. We're
Mm.
actually making the same types of moves, losing relationships, quitting our jobs, and doing these crazy drastic moves that society would
Mhm.
label you as freaking crazy, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when in reality, we're uncrazying all of the false programs that have been put into our mind of
Yes.
how you're supposed to live because you're
We're starting to see truth. We're starting to see clearly because we've finally are learning how to clear the fog and the everything that's been impressed upon us.
yeah, yeah. And in that unlearning, right, that unlearning process, it's very
Mhm.
difficult. And so like, the awakening journey is a journey that I would choose a billion times over, but it's like not for the faint of heart. Like it's
No.
rigorous. Like it is the hardest thing that you have to do because you have to look the world in the face and say, no, I'm not doing things the way that you've
Yeah.
always told me to do it. And that
Mhm.
includes family, friends, loved
Mhm.
ones that you have grown up with, and then you're completely shifting things around. And it's sometimes you have
Yeah.
to make decisions to separate yourself or distance yourself from
Yeah.
certain people that you used to hang out with all the time. And so it's just a whole rebranding, or like maybe unbranding of yourself, and just
Mm.
of
Yeah.
all of the identities that you
Yeah.
associated with, of like,
That you thought you were.
yes, and then you realize you were none of that, and everything that you've been told was a lie. So then you almost go through
Yeah.
this like rejection, and like you want to rebel
Yeah.
against the system, and you hate the
Mm.
world, and you hate these people. And that's
Yes.
another learning process that I had to go through, because I realized
Yeah.
that I have to accept all of
Yeah.
this, all
Yes.
the suffering. I have to accept the world the way that it is, and
Yeah.
just live my truth, just as Jesus wanted us to do. And that's how we
Yeah.
bring the kingdom of heaven, is by
Yeah.
embodying that level of forgiveness. But you like, these are all the
Yes.
lessons that I had to learn, right? And that we all have to learn
Mhm.
and go through.
Mhm.
And once you realize, like, oh, I can become aware of my patterns now. When you become aware of your
Yeah.
cycles and patterns of suffering that you've put yourself in, that's when I believe God gives us the tools to break those patterns, right? Because then we can say,
Mhm.
oh, okay,
Mhm.
I realize now that I was putting myself in these situations, and now that I'm aware of
Yeah.
it, then you can break it,
Mhm.
and then you're free, and then it changes. That's the liberation and the deliverance, right? That the Bible would
Mhm.
speak of, as you're delivered from these
Right.
old patterns that you had. And
Right.
um so through, let's go fast forward to like 6 months ago, I was doing my coaching, and one of my clients who reached out, she was from Europe. She's from Croatia. I didn't even know Croatia existed. I didn't even know it was a
Mhm.
country. And I started working with her, and then it turns out like she had skills that I needed to grow my brand, and I had the skills to help her. So then we ended up like collaborating. And
Mhm.
then one day she was like, hey, like, why don't you come to Croatia, and we can really work on expanding your brand, and like we can
Mhm.
just like go, you know check out Italy, and like, like
Mhm.
go we went to Tuscany. Go ahead.
I'm jumping the gun here, but this is the love of your life.
Yes, yes. And so, who's a woman, right? So, like,
Yes.
give like the audience some context, like, I came out of the closet, and I have this story on my TikTok too. Like, I posted this on. I came out at 21 years old, through all of the trauma and things that I have gone through, and like, sexual trauma. I believe that a lot of that molded and shaped my identity of homosexuality. And now this is where I always like to like add the caveat, like, I don't ever
Mm,
believe that being gay is wrong, right? Or
mm,
like,
mhm.
love who you love. But I do know through my own personal experience that the trauma that I suffered, right, as a child
Mhm.
and in my teenage and formative years had a heavy
Yeah.
influence on my sexuality, right? It's on the
Wow.
TV screens. I was watching porn at like 10 years old, 11 years old.
Wow.
I had my first sexual encounter with a boy at 5 years old and a girl at 4 years old. Like
Wow.
deep, deep, deep traumatic wounds that really like confuse you when your brain is still trying to form.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
when you regulate your nervous system, so I'm speaking to this from a scientific level because this is the best way that I've understood it. When I regulated my nervous
Yeah.
system, my hormones like regulated. I was
Yeah.
not driven by feelings of lust and, anger
Yeah.
and shame and guilt. The awakening journey forced me to face my shame and to face my guilt and to face my lust and to face all of those negative emotions that were stopping me from self actualization and reaching my full potential. And so in that
Yeah.
process, I fell in love with a woman. And
Mm.
I went to Europe, and that wasn't even like it wasn't even the plan. Like, I didn't even
Mhm.
think that this was
Yeah.
going to happen. And
Yeah.
what's funny is prior to leaving for Europe, I even talked to God because like I always had these feelings of shame and guilt of being gay sometimes, like, that the
Right.
world tells you that it's wrong. And like I was like, this isn't wrong, but like, God, show me if I can love a woman. Like, show
Right.
me that I can do it. I'm
Yeah.
putting it in your hands. I'm giving you the opportunity to change
Mm.
me. Like, I'm surrendering and being obedient. See, and
Mm.
it was a wild journey in Europe of like
Wow.
really, really exposing myself to someone on a level that I've never, telling her things that I've never told anybody before, and like really
Wow.
just allowing her to accept me fully
Yeah.
for who I am, my
Wow.
past, everything, and
Mm.
it turns out that like that acceptance and that nurturing and that
Mhm.
love that I received from her
Mm.
healed such deep feminine wounds that I had suffered
Mm.
in childhood. You know what I mean? Like, my
Mm.
first girlfriend at
Yeah.
14 years old, who I lost my virginity to, like, I had a very traumatic experience with her, like, where
Right.
I mean, she had an STD and never told me, and like
Oh.
when you're
Mm.
14 years old, like,
Mm.
that kills your spirit. That, like, I thought
That
my life was over, and
yeah.
like, like,
Yeah, that would kill your trust with women, I
yes,
feel,
and that's
like, in
exactly
a
what it did.
very big way, yeah.
Yeah, and that's
So
exactly what it did. I rejected women.
yeah,
Like, I rejected
of course.
women,
Yeah.
not to mention my mother wounds, right, that I suffered from in
Right.
childhood.
Mm.
Like the
Wow.
things that my mom had gone through, and, she suffered with her own, mental illnesses, and she allows me to speak on anything, so whenever I talk about
Yeah.
my mom, I always make sure like my mom lets me speak freely because she knows that
Yeah.
this message is like, on my heart, and I have to speak it. And
Yeah.
so, the
Mhm.
mother wounds that I suffered, the feminine wounds that I suffered at 14 years old, on top of, the sexual trauma that I went through of,
Mhm.
watching porn, being sexualized at a very, very young age.
Yeah.
When you regulate your nervous system and still the mind, you realize like, I can release all of that. And then like
Yeah.
you can build trust with somebody of the opposite gender
Yeah.
if you so choose, right? If you
Mhm.
choose and you want to stay
Mhm.
gay, then, stay there's nothing wrong. And I never want like my
Yeah.
audience or any audience to think that I'm speaking of it, because then people
Yeah, no.
are spitting in the face of the gay community. And it's like, no, like, I
Of course.
love the gay community. They're some of
Yes.
we were the funnest people in the, you know what I mean?
Yes. And, like, I just wanna touch on that. No, I like, your experience is your experience. Do
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And I find it very fascinating. Like, I remember listening to your TikTok video, the one you were referring to. We'll have, for those listening, we'll have all of Matt's links all below so that you can take a look at all of his stuff. And I'm sure you'll find that video on your TikTok. But I think it's an important conversation to be had. I agree, love who you should love, and this is not us saying like, oh, if you're gay, that means there's an imbalance within your hormones. That's not what we're saying either, because
Yeah.
I believe that we are all created differently, and I don't think that anything is black and white. But for your experience, based on your trauma, it did skew. I mean, I don't know what the right word is, but based on like the energy, or not energy, the hormonal imbalances and whatnot, you realize that I don't even know how to articulate this right, but I'm basically saying like, do you know what I'm saying?
I
Like
was
this is,
I rejected that part of myself, right? Like I was
yeah,
rejecting that part of
yeah,
myself that really could love a woman and that could, and I was
yeah.
rejecting it because of the things that I had gone through that said like,
Mm.
like, and then I was like, okay, then yeah, I like men. Uh,
Yeah.
or
And
things.
I think this is, sorry, I think this is so important to talk to though, because going back to what I was saying before, not saying it's wrong to be gay, and not saying that some people like aren't, not saying it's
Yeah,
a hormonal imbalance for everyone, but I think it is important to talk about because the mental health crisis is bigger than it's ever been.
yeah,
And it's affecting kids younger and younger and younger.
yes,
And people are making permanent changes to their bodies and things like that based on what, do you know what I'm saying, based on where they're at.
yeah,
And not saying it's wrong for everybody either, because again, I'm not saying, none of this is black and white, but it is important conversations to be had, because like in your case, for example, it's like through healing, things shifted for you.
yeah,
Not saying that's the case for everyone, not saying that should be the case for everyone, because
yeah,
again, everyone's paths are different and one is not better than the other.
yeah.
But I do think it is important to bring awareness to this. And I think it is an important conversation to be had. So that's just what I wanted to add. I appreciate too, like, again, what you're saying, making it very clear for those listening, like, we're not saying that it's wrong or anything like that either.
Yeah, because it's a very sensitive topic. I think we can agree
Yeah.
in 2024, and like, the
Yeah.
everything that's going on. The world is crazy right now. So like,
Yeah.
but what I have come to understand is that in sharing my story, the amount of messages
Mm.
that I received from people that have had the
Mm.
same situation of what I've gone
Wow.
through, sexual trauma at a very young age,
Mm.
mother father wounds, and then they were attracted to the same sex, and then like it's almost like it's happening to where they're like realizing they can be attracted to the opposite sex, and like
Mm.
it's almost like too in our society we're afraid to almost allow ourselves to change that identity, because then it's like you're going against what the entire world is saying, like, oh, you're born this way, and it's almost like it's almost like
Yeah.
you're spitting in the face of the gay community. But that's
Yeah.
why I'm so like I love the gay community. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I still don't
Yeah.
have all the answers. I'm still going through my own
Yeah.
awakening. I'm, some answers I'm not equipped yet, and I'm still healing. And what I am saying is
Yes.
that in this process, I've fallen in love with a woman, and like that's an amazing and a
Aw.
beautiful thing. Um,
Yeah.
and in sharing my story, I've realized that
Mm.
there are so many people out there like me. And,
Yeah.
I was rejecting a part of myself that I finally faced and was comfortable
Mm.
enough to face with a woman who accepted me totally, fully for who I am.
Mm.
And that gave
Mm.
me the space to be able to finally accept that, that part of myself that was hurt for so long.
Right.
And, and it regulated a lot of things in my mind. And it made me realize
Yeah.
through my personal story, a lot of the trauma that I suffered heavily influenced
Yeah.
my identity. And also, you have
Right.
it on the TV screens and, all
Yeah.
let's just be honest, right? We have to have this
Yeah.
conversation and be able to be
Yeah.
uncomfortable saying these sorts of
Yeah.
things without feeling attacked, right? Like I'm never
Yeah.
trying to attack anybody, but I'm holding
Mm.
space to have this difficult
Mhm.
conversation because it needs to be had, because there are so many people out there
Mhm.
suffering, suicide,
Yeah.
mental illness, to the point of like nobody just wants to live anymore because like they don't
Yeah.
know, they just don't know who they are, right? And society tries to
Yeah.
tell us who we are, right? Here,
Yeah.
you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. When in reality, we're none of that.
Yeah.
It's just a very like you know what I mean? Like a sensitive.
It's a sensitive topic, absolutely. So I just wanna, like, thank you too for, having the courage to speak about it,
Yeah.
because that in and of itself is an act of courage. I almost wanna say it's an act of rebellion, you know? It's, but necessary. It's a
Yeah.
necessary act of rebellion, and, I also wanna say I think that there can be more than one truth, like, 2 things can be true.
Yeah.
So it's not black and white, and with that said, though, these conversations are necessary, and I think more of these conversations are necessary when it comes to like other things as well. Like I got some hate yesterday because I posted a video talking about Botox and filler and
Mm.
procedures and, my honest opinion on that. And, of course, when something is so normalized within society, it's going to trigger people, and that's not a bad thing. And I think that we need to learn how to have open conversation with people without judgment, without judgment. Just because you might disagree with a person, that's okay, like that's okay. But it's important to have these conversations so that we can open each other's minds up. It's like maybe I have a conversation with someone about something and maybe they change my mind.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm very open, and I like to hear other perspectives because I don't know everything.
Yeah.
I still have so much to learn myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's hard in this society. We get offended, we get defensive,
Oh.
and, it cancel culture, this and
Mm.
that. And I feel like that needs to change. And people also, they act on their triggers. So it's like someone's opinion might trigger them. Instead of digesting it and thinking about it, then responding, it's more of a reaction.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard to have these conversations when people are so defensive, when they're coming from a place of ego and reaction. So I think that, it is an act of bravery to really talk about it
Mm.
because of the state that the world is in that
Yeah.
sense. But thank you. We need people opening up, and even you saying the amount of messages that you got.
Mm.
I had full body chills when you said that, which is, I feel you're probably reaching people who, had these experiences too, and they're probably like, they probably feel so grateful for you to speak out about this, because a lot of these people, I'm assuming, might be afraid to speak out themselves. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you're finding a voice not only for you but for people who are not heard, who, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I think that's, that's part of the purpose in our journey is to, we've gone through so much suffering with this awakening, but at the same time, we've gone through an equal amount of liberation. And when you go
Mhm.
through that liberation and you experience that liberation and that freedom, you realize just how much humanity is suffering. So when we
Yes.
look at,
Mhm.
and this brings up one of the verses, or like what Jesus said. Jesus said, "You will be hated in my name." And what does that mean? That means when you embody compassion, love, authenticity, truth,
Mm.
grace, compassion, kindness,
Mhm.
when you embody that truly, the world will reject you, right? Because
Absolutely.
the world pretends we everybody wears a mask, right? We wear this mask
Yeah.
on the outside, but we don't talk about that we're suffering, what we're suffering from on the inside. And when you
Yeah, and they reject you because you are mirroring a level of freedom
mm,
that you have achieved within yourself that they have not accessed yet.
yeah, and that's why we will experience the things that we'll experience. But it's almost like, I always say suffering is sacred, because like when we suffer, like if
Yes.
you can see the beauty in your
Mhm.
suffering, it can completely change your
Mhm.
perception of how you view your life through that suffering, and recognizing, all right, this is just a storm that I'm going to go through, and when I go through it, like God is going to reward me with another level of liberation and deliverance and freedom.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yeah. It's like what's coming to mind. I keep seeing this on my Instagram feed. Some people might have seen this already, but the bald eagle.
mm,
The bald eagle
it's my
every
spirit
50
animal.
years. One of my, like, such a huge sign for me. Like, I feel so connected with bald eagles, but bald eagles, every 50 years, they have to go through a death and rebirth.
Mm,
They have to fly to, I forget where they go to, but they go somewhere and it's a 90-day process. And they have to like smack their beak on these rocks until it comes out. I think it's their beak or their talons, something
mm,
like that. And then it might be their talons. And then they also have to pluck all of their feathers out
wow.
so that it can regrow, so that they have the opportunity to live another 20 years. But if they don't go through this 90-day process of pain and suffering, they will die.
Mm,
So it's like eagles, man, they're just, Yeah, I feel like it might be their I'm not sure. It's either their beak that comes out and
I feel like
regrows or
it's
their
the beak.
talons.
I think I've heard
Yeah,
something like that, the beak, and
yeah,
that's so beautiful. If we could just learn that everything in this world is death and rebirth, right? Like, and that's another thing that our awakenings really kind of remove is the fear of death. Like, I have no fear of dying. Like, if anything, like
same.
I'm excited in a non-morbid way to like see and experience what happens next. Like,
Well, do you know what? So I had a mushroom journey
yeah,
a couple weeks ago, and let's talk about this really quick because I think you'll find this fascinating. You probably believe this already, but like, so I've always believed in past lives, but I've never really like I've believed in them and whatever, but spirit showed me a few really significant past life memories, wounds that I ended up carrying over into this lifetime that I didn't heal in that lifetime. And
yeah,
just really quick to give you context, for one, I was pregnant with two young kids. My husband died tragically in that life. So I hold on to relationships because I'm afraid to like lose it all again. And in that lifetime, I like died alone and whatever.
mm,
Also, I was backstabbed by a friend. I came to this life with back pain, which I'm
ooh,
like now healing.
yeah,
Yeah, and then there was another one. Without getting into the nitty gritty of all of it, but it was so real, and I relived it. It's like I relived those experiences, like quite literally. And psilocybin will really help. I'm sure you yeah, it
yeah,
really has you like feel it. But what was also shown to me at the same time is like we call them past lives because that's how we can comprehend it, but there is actually no such thing as past lives. This is all actually happening at the very same time.
mm,
And it was so I'm getting chills as I'm feeling into this, but at one point during that journey, spirit brought me to that part of me that was really suffering because one of my past lives there was extreme loss. I dealt with extreme loss, and they explained that through the soul's journey everyone will experience a life where they have extreme loss.
mm,
And I was connecting with myself in that past life, which wasn't really a past life. It's really happening right now.
yeah,
And I connected with her, and it's like I'm getting full body chills. I was just telling her I love you. It's like
mm,
she needed that. She needed that. And she needed that. And I was just there and I felt her and I was like holding her. And it's like a me in a different timeline that I know she's experiencing this pain right now and she needed me. And I was able to give her that love in this moment. It's like when timelines cross. I don't even know how to articulate it. I can't articulate it properly. I wish I could, but it was a wild experience, and I just
wow,
wanted to just like
yeah,
hold her. And anyways, just really really fascinating. So I don't fear death either. It's so too much for us to like comprehend, but there's definitely so much more. And we're just like little bugs right now that
yeah,
we have no clue what's
no,
out there.
We're interrupting this episode to share something close to our hearts, our virtual healing circles. We have been loving them so much and meeting so many of you incredible people through them. Brittany and I are passionate about bringing people together to support one another and heal in community. We felt alone on our paths for so long, and coming together in community has been instrumental to our growth, and we've both seen the importance in it. We aren't meant to do this alone. In unity and vulnerability, we find strength, courage, and support each other on our paths back to ourselves. Our monthly virtual seminars blend discussions, workshops, and practices to nurture your mind, body, and spirit. Whether seeking guidance, healing, or a listening ear, our gatherings offer a safe, inclusive space for people to connect, heal, and grow. Join us on this journey of healing in community. Together we can heal, grow, and thrive. Register for the next circle using the link in the show notes. We hope to see you there.
yeah. I have never experienced a past life. Like, I want to do a past life regression. I've looked into Org's
Mm,
canon and all of that sort. But that's
yeah,
beautiful. I totally like believe that we've lived lives previously over and over and over, and we learn the lessons until we liberate our soul, and then whatever happens after this is going to be amazing and beautiful. That's what I know.
yeah,
And so, when you can have your heart set on eternity, right? Like,
yeah,
that's what our awakening does to us. It restores our perception from just this physical meat suit vessel to our soul, and your soul is eternal. And so I equate that to like biblical teachings that state you have
yeah,
eternal life, which is just the
yeah.
recognition that I'm eternal.
Mm,
So I have nothing
yes,
to fear here. And when you recognize that you're
yeah,
eternal, you don't fear
yeah,
fear death. And
yeah, yeah,
when you conquer the fear of death, I mean, you pretty much
yeah,
conquer any other fears in this lifetime.
yeah,
I was very afraid afraid of death.
Mm,
Over the course of, you had mentioned like if I've had an ayahuasca, two changa, and two bufo
mm,
plant medicine ceremonies in the middle of the
mm.
last 18 months of my
Wow.
awakening. Like I just dove into everything. I was like, give me the plant medicine. Like, I need to know what this is all about. And like,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother level of like,
Mm,
exposure to reality, or the what's behind the veil. And
yeah.
those, I died in one of my ceremonies. Like I
Same.
literally thought that I was dead. I was looking at everybody around me, and looking at my lifeless body, and I was like, holy cow, I just died. And I was in I don't know where I was,
Yeah.
whatever. When you smoke them, I smoked, it was changa, so it's smokable ayahuasca, and I died,
Right.
and I literally descended into hell. Like I went in,
Whoa.
and I was like,
Whoa.
I just died and went to hell. I don't know why I deserve that. Like, and I was like, but then it like, I had to embody this level of surrender and acceptance. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like I didn't fight it, and I didn't fight it at all. And when I
Yes.
stopped fighting it, I was brought back and recognized I never
Yes.
died. And it was like this, like this feeling of
Yes.
holy freaking crap. I just
Oh my God.
conquered death in rebirth, like in that medicine.
I That's so beautiful. It's so funny. I've had a very similar experience, not quite the same, but
Yeah.
similar. Like we're experiencing like death through plant medicine as well.
Yeah.
It takes a huge amount of surrender, and it's not easy. And a lot of people talk about like quote unquote bad trips and stuff. And what I always say, people who do plant medicine and whatever, the best thing you can do is surrender.
Mm,
There is no bad trip. It becomes quote unquote bad when you resist. That's where it creates more of the anxiety, the worry, that, oh, this is getting dark, it's getting this. But when you just allow,
mm,
that's when like sometimes they'll take you to some, I don't want to say dark and scary places, but yeah, dark and scary places.
yeah.
Like I've had some, yeah, experiences where it's like not comfortable, but as a result of it, there's so much more growth, so much more expansion. And that's so interesting that it's interesting because I'm thinking of a friend of mine, her husband with an ayahuasca journey as well. Very similar to what you just explained. It's like he went under the ground and was getting
Yes.
absorbed by like the roots and all of these things. It's like he went down and like came back up too. And she even said like I think he like died. Like so that's so interesting.
It's exactly.
Very, very similar.
Oh yeah, and it was. I could feel myself descending. Like so that's how I like
Oh,
that's where I connected the dots. Like I felt myself go down. Like it was like
wow.
"Ew," and like I could hear, you can hear like like voices, but they're just like subtle moans. Like I could just hear like subtle moans, and it was a beautiful, plant medicine is like beautiful. Like I
Yes.
strive and want to do, plant medicine ceremonies as not,
Yeah.
as when I'm called to do them. Like I think they're
Yes.
so beautiful
Yeah.
and so healing, and they're a great
Yeah.
tool to help you heal and not
Yeah.
a solution, right? Because I always like make
Mm,
sure to say that, like, because if you're
yeah.
not ready for a plant medicine ceremony, it can catapult you into a dark night of the soul that you don't
Hmm.
know how to, that could lead you into spiritual psychosis, or things of that nature. So
Yes.
that's the one
Yeah.
that I would like to say, like, if you're called to
Yeah.
do it, but like it's not a solution to healing, it's a tool to help us face the things that we've
Yeah.
been running away from.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And those of you who listen, me and Holly, who is my co-host, we talk about that actually quite often. Is it's a tool. We should never be giving our power away to anything outside of us. They are a very beneficial and helpful tool if and when you're ready. I always tell people like, put it out into the universe and it will find you.
Yes.
Like when I experienced ayahuasca for the first time, I put it out into the universe of January. Like I was 29, turning 30 that year. January, I was like, I'm feeling called to ayahuasca. I'm like, Mother Aya, if you're calling me, my birthday's in October. I would love to gift myself a ceremony for my 30th birthday. I was invited to like 3 or 4 ayahuasca ceremonies in that month.
Wow.
Like, I'm not even
Chills.
kidding. I was like, okay, I hear you. It will find you. I truly believe that.
Oh yeah.
And there's, all different roads lead to the same place. So I always recommend like, don't necessarily go out searching for it. It'll come to you
Yes.
if and when, yeah,
Absolutely.
you're ready.
Yeah, and that's what I've learned is the medicine will call you. Like you'll feel the
Yes.
call to this medicine. Like it's strange.
She literally does call you Mother Aya, she calls you.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's so funny. I'm noticing the time. We're already running up
I
to an
know.
hour here. I feel like I could just chat with you all day. But I was wondering, was there any, well, first of all, like, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for, just getting vulnerable and everything you talked about. Like, you've definitely been on a journey. There's a few things that you mentioned, and I feel like we could have like dove into like those things and really like talk about like a lot of the things. But, thank you for coming on here. Thank you for having this conversation. I was wondering if there was anything that you wanted to leave the audience with today.
Yeah. God is real. God is
Mm,
so real. There is something inside of you that if you still your mind and trust and open your heart, it will flood into you. And it's everything that you have been searching for your entire life.
mm,
All the love that you've been searching for, and all of the wrong people and all of the wrong things is always light inside of you. And if you have a distorted relationship with God, due to religion or past traumas or things of that nature, I just want you to know that God loves you for
mm,
absolutely everything that you are, every trauma that you've gone through, everything that you've suffered, every wound that you're healing from. God just wants you to know that you are accepted, and for you to come to God as you are. And when you come to God as you are and you no longer hold that shame and that guilt that says you're not worthy, that's when you're flooded with that love you've been searching for your whole life. And that's what will free you, and that's what will liberate you, and
mm,
that's what will heal you from all of the things that you've struggled from. So, you know,
mm,
my journey is not special, right? I am no better than anybody else, and we're no better, and healed, unhealed. It's just a living
mm,
example and proof to share our testimony that says that
mm,
we are all children of God, right? And
mhm.
when we choose this
Yeah.
journey, it's the most difficult journey, but it is the most rewarding and
Mm,
beautiful journey because God is so good.
mm,
And
yeah.
the things that are to come in this life, um,
Mm,
we will need that connection to move us through the things that are to come in the future. And I believe that
yeah.
we are the way makers, I guess you could say, is to help show
Mhm.
people that there is a different way to live through the heart,
Mm,
and through
mm.
love and unity. And um, I'll never stop speaking the message of
Love.
truth and salvation and deliverance and love, and because that's what God has called us to do. And
Mm,
um, just have an open heart and look at things from a non-judgmental point of view, and um,
mhm,
just recognize people for the things that they've gone through, and not
mm.
necessarily what it triggers inside of you. When we have that acceptance and that grace for other people, we can have that acceptance and grace for ourselves.
Oh my gosh, such beautiful words. I had like full body chills as you were speaking. I really felt that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure to have this conversation with you today. Thank you so much for those of you who are listening, those of you who have tuned into the podcast. I will have Matthew's links to all of his social medias and all of that, where you can find him in the show notes below. So definitely go over, show him some love, give him a follow, and until next time, bye everyone.
See ya.
As we wrap up today's episode, we want to extend our deepest gratitude for joining us on this journey. Your support does not go unnoticed. If you enjoyed this episode and find value in our conversations, please take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also allows us to reach more people who can benefit from our community of healing and support. Every review, every rating makes a difference. Thank you for being a part of the Multiple Truths podcast family. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Multiple Truths podcast. Keep speaking your truth and spreading your light. We love you, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday.